Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome to our next segment of Real Talk FCD. Today we are joined by congressional candidate Eric Lynn, as well as our FCD Jewish Caucus Chair Alexa. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alexa, and we're going to get the ball rolling.
Alrighty, good morning. I know we talked a little bit off recording, but thank you so much for being here for a little
Thank you for
Real
having
Talk
me.
interview. You are running for what might be the most important district in the country right now.
That's right.
And you are a lifelong Democrat. You worked in the Obama campaign. And most importantly, for the focus of my caucus, you are Jewish. So that's why we invited you here to talk about all of those things. Just to start off, can you talk about your experiences, being a Jew in American politics and how that part of your identity has shaped your political work?
Sure. Look, well, first, thank you both for having me. I was a proud college Democrat myself in undergrad, and really appreciate all of the work that you do as college Democrats here in Florida, and particularly you, Alexa, here in St. Petersburg at Eckerd College. So I am a native of St. Pete. I grew up here in St. Petersburg, and you are right. I am Jewish and proud to be a Jewish American, and that has shaped me as a person and my personality and my career and my views in politics. So I did work, as you mentioned earlier, for President Barack Obama, both on the campaign. I was one of the first 30 people to join his campaign in the year 2007, when many were very skeptical of his ability to win the presidential election at that point in time. But I believe very strongly in him as a person, as a candidate, and the policies that he was advancing. And I was proud to work for him both on the campaign and then in the administration, and to serve as a senior advisor to him on national security and to the Secretary of Defense, and happy to speak about that more in the future. But your question is about my Jewish identity and how that shaped me as a person and my politics. And the reality is that growing up as a Jew, I always believed in the concept of tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And it's a concept that I was taught at a very young age by my family, by my teachers, by rabbis and leaders in the community. And it's one that, to me, means that we need to leave this world, and certainly Mother Earth, but also the country and the place that we live in, the state and the city, in a better place than we found it. And that has guided my politics and my views throughout my entire life, certainly in my political career, but also in other work that I've done. So I was drawn at a very early age to doing work in politics, and certainly the work that we do proudly as Democrats to stand up for the values that are going to fulfill the goal of tikkun olam and repairing the world, which is to make the world a better place, to make the world a place that is more welcoming to those that may not feel as welcome, right? To take care of the other, which Republicans, and as they continue their dangerous lies, continue to point to the other as a negative. We've always viewed the other as a positive, and let's welcome the stranger into our proverbial tents.
Yeah. In the Jewish community, we are often the other. So I think that gives us a special perspective on, being open to everyone, because, we have been very reliant on that in the past.
That is right. That is right. Look, to speak for the voiceless is something that I view as very important in politics. And I view it's a very important lesson that we learn in our Jewish values. And so, to answer your question, the Jewish values that I learned as a kid, as a student, as a young adult, and now as a parent and as an adult, I'm always learning. They have guided my politics, and they've guided my desire to work towards tikkun olam and repairing the world.
Absolutely. As soon as you said tikkun olam, I was like, yes, absolutely. That's something that has been a
for
key
those
word
of
for me.
for those of you just thinking about the words Tikkun Olam, I spoke often with President Obama about Tikkun Olam, and he's given public remarks both when he was campaigning as well as when he was president about his views and the importance of Tikkun Olam as well. So happy to know that he's aligned on those very same issues.
That's amazing that you've been able to, put that into the national conversation. So you mentioned being an early adopter of the Obama campaign, which was ultimately extremely successful. You were also an early supporter of the Biden campaign as well. Can you talk about a little bit of your work with more recent national politics?
Sure. So as a senior advisor in the Obama and Biden administration, I had the honor and distinction of working with Vice President Biden as well. And when Vice President Biden, now President Biden, started his campaign to run for president in 2019, and he made his first trip to Florida, he reached out to me, and I was honored to obviously join him and support him and be a part of the campaign here in Florida. My work for President Biden, then Vice President Biden, was really an honor to do. As you know, he has a great expertise in a range of foreign policy issues. And I was working for the Secretary of Defense at the Defense Department, and Vice President Biden was both close with the Secretary of Defense, but also would be very active in working on those policy issues along with us. As you know, his career prior to being Vice President was as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So President Biden, when I think he came into the presidency, likely was the leader, if not in the top 2 or 3 presidents that knew most of the world leaders already. He already had relationships with them because of his time as vice president, but also his time as Senate Foreign Relations chairman. And so I really enjoyed my work with him in the administration. And then moving throughout the campaign in 2019 and 2020, I was proud to be a part of a foreign policy team that worked on policy issues for the campaign. So my friend Tony Blinken, who is now the Secretary of State, doing an excellent job for us diplomatically around the world. And it's
You're just casually name dropping all of these people.
They are friends and people that I have worked with, honored to have been there and worked with them and to have learned from them. And really that's part of the argument that I make every day when I'm meeting voters, as to, I want to be your representative in Congress representing Pinellas County and Florida, and use the experience and the knowledge that I've gained from those who have come before me, to include certainly Secretary of State Blinken and of course, without saying it goes, President Biden and President Obama.
That's amazing. You were in this Department of Defense. You did a lot of work with Israel, and you did, I think, my personal thing that I've wanted to talk to you most about for 3 years now, ever since I first heard your name, is your work on the Iron Dome. Can you talk briefly about all of those things and maybe break down for some people, some of the pros and cons and the, basic information about a democratic relationship with Israel?
Sure. Those are great questions. They're not ones that
we have a 30-minute time slot, and I've just dropped that entire topic on you. So just like a 101 class.
Certainly do my best to talk about both my experiences as well as the relationship between the United States and Israel. So when I was serving and honored to serve President Obama as the senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense, a lot of my work was focused on our relationships in the Middle East. So that included the U.S.-Israel relationship, but it also included our relationships around the Middle East, to include the U.S.-Jordan relationship, which is quite strong, and of course the relationship with Egypt, which went through a great amount of turmoil as I was there during the Arab Spring, and President Obama had to be, I would say, correctly resolute with the Egyptian government about the way they were treating civilians and protesters at Tahrir Square during the beginning of the Arab Spring, something that I was very proud of President Obama for his work on. Now, you asked about the Iron Dome specifically and my work with the U.S.-Israel relationship. And what was really a true honor for me was to work with the Israeli defense attaché, who, and for your listeners and for your members who are listening to this, every country around the world sends a defense attaché to their embassy in Washington to work with the United States Defense Department and with the U.S. military. I should be careful and say every country we have relations with. Obviously, the Iranians and the North Koreans are not sending their attachés, but we'll keep those details as high level as we can. And I worked with the defense attaché, who, for those of you that know the current Israeli government, at the time was a two-star general by the name of General Benny Gantz. And to fast forward to today, General Gantz is now in the civilian government. He ran for prime minister against Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he's now serving in the government of Prime Minister Bennett as the defense minister. So for me to see someone that I had the opportunity to work with, starting off as a defense attaché in Washington, to move up through the ranks in the Israeli government is nice to see. But I had the opportunity to work with him on a technology that the Israelis themselves had invented, which they called the Iron Dome. And it was an amazing technology that is a defensive system to prevent rockets from landing on your territory, most often in the case of southern Israel, on homes and schools and other civilian targets that were being fired at by Hamas and Islamic Jihad out of Gaza. And the technology was one that the Israelis had brought previously to the Bush administration, and that technology had been rejected for US support. The Bush administration rejected it as not effective and as too expensive. And when I came to the Department of Defense and
very
found
interesting
that file, it certainly is.
That's very interesting, given the Bush administration's relationship with military technology.
That's right. That's right. There's probably a number of reasons why that happened, but we don't have time to go into them here on this interview. But I'm happy to discuss them further with you or your group anytime in the future. But to round out the story, it was rejected previously. I had traveled to Israel with then Senator Obama in the summer of 2008, if you remember his trip where traveled to Israel and the Palestinian territories, and then traveled to Germany, where he gave that large speech in Berlin, speaking about unifying the world and foreign policy. And, you know, I always think about that speech and think about the contrast between the way President Obama led our foreign policy and how President Trump really brought our foreign policy such negative reaction, not only for us here as Americans, but also for how we were perceived around the world and not able to receive the respect and credibility that we should always get as the United States of America. So when I traveled there with President Obama, he had stated when he was in southern Israel a very simple policy, which is that he would do whatever he could as president of the United States to protect civilians, particularly children, because we had seen schools and homes that had been damaged and met families of victims, people that had been killed and maimed by those rockets. And he committed to supporting anything he could to protect those civilians. And when I came to the Pentagon and saw the technology that General Gantz had presented, I felt that we needed to bring this technology to President Obama and give him the opportunity to pursue it should he choose to do so. And we were able to get another test at Redstone Arsenal down in Alabama, where we test all of our counter rocket systems. Secretary Bob Gates was very supportive of this test, and certainly my colleagues that I worked with at the time, Michelle Flournoy and Colin Call and others, were very supportive of moving forward on this as well. And we eventually brought it to President Barack Obama, where he approved the support of the United States for this defensive counter-rocket technology known as the Iron Dome. And I'm proud to say that the Iron Dome was the first counter-rocket system ever used in real-time rocket fire sorties, and it has proven 90% effective and saved thousands of lives. And the way that most experts refer to it is it does not just save the lives of those whose heads the rockets didn't fall on, but it actually saved the lives of number one, those troops, whether they're U.S. troops or Israeli troops that are not ordered to go into battle, and those civilians, Palestinian civilians, and other civilians around the world, because I believe Iron Dome helps to prevent wars and helps to prevent the killing of innocent people. So proud to have worked on it and support it.
Absolutely. And that's really amazing. So I think that you said that you were going to be done at noon. Is that correct?
I do have another meeting at noon, so
Okay.
obviously
So
happy to take
we'll
a couple extra minutes with you guys. But you know, I recognize that you have a number of questions. I'll try to answer quickly for you.
we'll
If you
do,
want me
you
to go
know,
to speed round.
sort of a large general question, then we can start wrapping up.
Okay.
To put it extremely bluntly, a recent extreme increase in anti-Semitism in America, sort of most specifically the hostage situation in Dallas the other week, sort of brought to attention how strong and international a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic conspiracy still is in the United States. Can you talk about some of your work in facing and combating anti-Semitism, and anything that you would want to put into place to further that once you make it into office?
Yeah, great question. Look, it is extremely disappointing, disheartening, disillusioning, a range of words that we can use to describe our feelings of the rise of anti-Semitism. The causes of the rise of anti-Semitism are multifold, but I would really like to state here publicly and strongly, as I do all across my campaign when I have the opportunity to speak about this, that I believe the rise in anti-Semitism is not a coincidence, that it took place around the same time that we had a president of the United States, who President Biden now rightly calls the former defeated president. We had a president of the United States who was not condemning and who was willing to accept the statements and views of anti-Semitic, racist people. I think most specifically to the time back at Charlottesville, where there was a very racist anti-Semitic march. If you remember that time, the statements that were made at that march and the chant was, "The Jews will not replace us." And those really horrible anti-Semitic words and rhetoric, the President of the United States came out and, shocking to me and to I think all of us, said that there were good people on both sides of that situation. You and I know, and Dylan knows, and every member of your group knows, that there are not good people on the side of anti-Semites and of Nazism. And that's something that unfortunately becomes exacerbated when you have the most powerful person in the world, who is still the president of the United States of America, saying there are good people on both sides. And you saw it exacerbated even further when we had the killings of immigrants coming across our border. Again, we spoke in the beginning of this interview about being treated as the other. And that is exactly what the former defeated President Trump, did so many times with his rhetoric, both for immigrants as well as, in my opinion, for Jews and anti-Semitic comments, when he says there are good people on both sides. So now you come to today, you look at the fact that sadly 3 years ago, there was the most violent attack on a synagogue in United States history, in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. You look to what just took place recently with the hostage taking, where I would say only because of the amazing work and training that rabbi had received through a number of federal grants and through the Anti-Defamation League and other groups that work to fight anti-Semitism, was he able to avert more deaths and more people or hostages being killed in that situation. But we need to continue that type of work that rabbi received, and that type of training to protect against this at a very local level. So that includes working with groups such as the Anti-Defamation League that fights anti-Semitism. That includes working with local law enforcement. Here, I'm a proud member of the board of the Federation. And what we work on in the Federation is working with our local police department, as well as the county sheriff's department. And they come and they do trainings, not only for synagogues, but also for Jewish community centers, Jewish schools, any publicly facing buildings that are identifying as Jewish, to ensure that they have the ability to be trained and to protect their buildings and their students and their children. And by the way, the police departments and the sheriff's office works with any religious organizations or other organizations that need such protection from racism and anti-Semitism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and the like. It has been on the rise far too much across this country. I do lay that blame directly at the feet of the former defeated president and his supporters. If you wink at white supremacist groups, racist groups, and do not outwardly condemn them the same way that President Trump didn't outwardly condemn David Duke during his initial campaign, or racist comments that he made, or going forward to the Charlottesville riot and attacks that we just spoke about with those racist and anti-Semitic statements, then these are consequences that we unfortunately as a country have to face, and we must fight against them, and I will commit to doing so in Congress.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we have about 5 minutes left. I think to wrap us up, give us your elevator pitch, talk about your campaign a little bit, send us off on a slightly less depressing and much more hopeful note.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you guys for the opportunity. It's been good to speak with you. As I mentioned earlier, I was proud to be a college Democrat when I was in college, and I appreciate all the work that you are doing. This district is one of the most important districts in the country to help us keep our Democratic majority in Congress. I am proud to be running in this seat to represent this community and to fight for everyday issues for everyday people, families, college students, and seniors. And what I want to do when I am in Congress is to fight for the issues that are important to you and me and share those democratic values. First, we need to fight for an economy that's working for everyone. I was proud to support the fight for $15 an hour as a minimum wage way back in 2015 when I was called a radical liberal for supporting it. And I'm now glad that the party has moved in this direction to be able to support $15 an hour. And we passed the $15 an hour amendment here in Florida. But as you know, it's taking way too long to implement, and the legislature is trying to make it more difficult to implement. And still, around the rest of the country, the federal minimum wage is $7.75, which is not a living wage that we need to continue to fight for. Secondarily, we need to fight to protect our environment. I was proud when I was working as legislative director in Congress to work on legislation which is known as the Everglades Restoration Act. For those of you around the state of Florida, you certainly know that the Everglades needs to be protected from the runoff and from the pollutants that are coming from Lake Okeechobee and northern parts of Florida, and really killing the wildlife and the waterways in that area. Now, that was 20 years ago when Everglades Restoration Act was passed, and I was working on it in the United States Congress as legislative director. And unfortunately, it has still not been implemented correctly, and we still have work to do on it. But that's the type of an example of legislation that we need to work on at the federal government level, because the state government is not going to do it. We saw again what happened with the spill at Piney Point, exacerbating the red tide bloom and killing so many fish and sea life that there were 800 tons of dead fish and sea life having to be removed from St. Petersburg beaches and shores because of that red tide bloom. Now, we know red tide occurs, but it only occurs at that level when you have spills, man-made, and continued difficulty because of pollutants, and we must hold those that are polluting our waterways accountable. Also need to fight against climate change and ensure that we are pushing solar and renewable energies. I'm really ashamed to see what the inept Tallahassee politicians are trying to do to take away solar opportunities for us here in the Sunshine State. It should be obvious that we push forward on it. The third issue that I really want to fight for is one of equality and equity. When we talk about gender equality, right now, a woman is still paid 70 cents on the dollar for the same job that a man does in 2022. That's wrong, and we can fix it federally in the United States Congress, and I'm going to fight to do so. We know that this Supreme Court, we really do mourn and miss Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This Supreme Court that Trump had the opportunity to appoint so many members on is now looking to overturn part, if not all, of Roe v. Wade. And we have to ensure that we are fighting for choice and the right to choose. A woman's health decisions should be made between her and her doctor, and not have the government in the middle telling her what she can and cannot do. Also, we can fix this federally in Congress. We need to codify the Roe v. Wade ruling in a way that will allow abortions to be legal across this country and not have these 15-week bans that we're now seeing passed in Florida and Mississippi and across the country. I also want to talk about equality for our LGBTQ plus community, something that I will fight for always. I was proud as a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon to fight to end the don't ask, don't tell policy. Now, I know most of your members are quite young and don't recall this policy, but it was a really discriminatory and wrong policy put in place by the United States government for our military and Department of Defense. If you were a member of the LGBTQ plus community, you were discharged from the military and not able to serve your country. And I'm proud that we fought to repeal it and to end that policy, because you should never be told you can't serve your country because of who you love or who you are. And we need to continue to fight just like that for LGBTQ plus equality, and I will do so in Congress. And we need to talk about racial equity and racial equality. We watched voter suppression bills being passed in Tallahassee with the pure intent of suppressing the votes of Black and brown people. If anyone tells you otherwise, they are not reading the law and understanding the intent of what those legislature members were trying to do. We have to stand up to make sure that the right to vote is protected and that we stand up for it at all times. I was proud to call the late Congressman John Lewis a friend. We need to honor his legacy and make sure that we're passing voting rights at the federal level so that we can supersede these really horrible, racist voter suppression laws that states are passing, such as here in Florida and Tallahassee and Georgia and around the country. The last E that I want to talk about with you is education. We need to make sure that we are funding education at a much higher level. This includes higher education funding for college students. This includes our early education funding, and I'm proud to be a board member on the Early Learning Coalition, and I stand with Joe Biden in wanting to have universal pre-K. Because if you think about a student first going to school when they are 5 years old, they're not going to be able to learn math or reading because they have never been socialized in a classroom to know what it means to sit in circle time with your peers, to hear a book read to a group, or to raise your hand when you have to ask the teacher a question. Those are things that should be taught in pre-K. And unfortunately, those that are not getting pre-K in the state of Florida are those that don't have the means to pay for it. We have universal pre-K here in Florida that is free from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You tell me any parent who gets off of their job at noon and can pick up their child and still provide for their family when they're also being not paid a living wage. It's not possible, and we must fight for universal pre-K. Florida right now ranks 47th on spending and per pupil spending in education. We're the third most populous state. We have the third most people in the country after California and Texas, but we are third from the bottom in how much we spend per student to educate them. How can we expect to have an educated workforce going forward in the future? How can we expect our children to be knowledgeable and to live the lives that we want them to fight for the Tikkun Olam that we talked about and preparing the world and leaving the world a better place than we found it if we're not educating them and providing for their education with funding? Something I will fight for in Congress. The decisions for education on details are made at the local and state level, but funding comes down from the national government and the federal government, and I will fight for that in Congress. So those are some of the policies I want to fight for. I wanted to share with your group, and I will leave you with this. I'm proud that we are leading in the polls and in the cash on hand race in this current election, but I need your help. I need all of your members to go to ericlynnforcongress.com to sign up to be a volunteer. You can volunteer whether you live in the district or you're around the country based on technology, or you're around the state of Florida. Also, you can sign a petition. The petitions will help me get my name on the ballot. You can go to ericlynnforcongress.com, and we need petitions to be signed by any registered voter in the state of Florida. And that will help us get our name on the ballot, as opposed to the way that Republicans got on the ballot by paying a $11,000 or $12,000 fee to put your name on the ballot. I would much rather do what I learned from President Obama, which is contact voters, go out to see voters at their doors, hear what they have to say, and ask them to sign their petition to put my name on the ballot to be their representative. So thank you for the opportunity to share my views with you and to share a bit about my campaign. I hope that you and your members will check out my policies on ericlynnforcongress.com. And I look forward to having a conversation like this with you guys again in the future.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I think we can make the official recording a wrap now if Dylan doesn't have anything else he'd like to add.
I just wanted to say quickly, thank you again for being able to come out today. Thank you to Alexa for setting all this up. That this is obviously, like Alexa had said, and Eric said, one of the most consequential races in the entire country. Definitely the most, I think, in the state of Florida. But this is going to be a race that we need to win to make sure that we can stem what could be a red wave in Florida and in other states. But I think that we have a great crop of candidates across the state, and I think that Eric is just one of many who are going to be able to rally our voters and make sure that this increasingly authoritarian Republican Party does not take an even stronger hold in the state of Florida. So thank you again for being able to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for all the work that you guys do as college Democrats. Please keep it up, and let's make sure we fight hard to elect Democrats in 2022.
All right.